Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session about the state of the situation in Canada right now and all what's going on with Canada. I'm Tamsin Plaxton. I'm one of the co-founders of Tamwood, a group of schools in Canada. And with me is Gonzalo Peralta, who is the Executive Director of Languages Canada. He is the expert on everything Canada. He was just sharing with me that he's in the middle of setting up meetings with our federal Minister of Immigration and other ministers. And anyway, I'm going to let Gonzalo lead this discussion, and I'll be contributing, just giving the experience of a school in Canada and what's happening for us.
Great. Thank you so much, Tamsin. Hi, everybody. It's great to, well, let's just say, I hope that you're all there. I see names. We don't see people. So we're proceeding with faith over here.
Maybe people could say hi in the chat.
Say hi in the chat.
Put a hello in the chat. And if you have any questions for us, you can put them in the chat or in the question and answer, and I'll be monitoring that.
Okay. So we're going to go back and forth a little bit. There's no PowerPoint over here. This is just strictly sharing information. As Tamsin said, the state of the nation, as it were, for language education in Canada right now. And we're going to cover, apart from a little backgrounder that we're doing now, who can come to Canada and study, access to visas, in-person classes, students arriving and the willingness to travel, and a little bit about the future and where we are. So just to launch everything, who can come to Canada to study and where can they study is the question. Since October 20th, all students able to obtain a study permit are allowed to come into Canada and to go to eligible institutions. So we've told you who the students are. Now the institutions. The institutions are those who are designated learning institutions. And on top of that, they have actually obtained a special permission to receive students under the current health and safety restrictions that are in place around the world and in Canada especially. And let me tell you what our members are doing. They have to submit readiness plans that are evaluated by a provincial ministry of advanced education, by a provincial ministry of health, by a federal ministry of health, by a federal ministry of immigration. And finally, after jumping through all of that, they're deemed eligible. And actually, Tamsin over here is probably the subject matter expert on this because hers was the very first institution in Canada to be put on that list in both BC and Ontario. So Tamsin, tell them how you did it.
How we did it. Yeah, we had a few schools call us and ask us, what did you do? How did you do it? We were the only school in Ontario approved for over a month. We were the first private school and only private school in the whole province of Ontario, and one of only a few in BC for quite a period of time. But I think the secret was that we really took seriously all the guidelines given by the government on how we were supposed to not only protect Canadians, but protect international students. So we went into great depth in our quarantine plan and our safety plan about all the measures we're taking to protect students. Canada is as worried about the students and their health and well-being as they are about Canadians. And that's a good thing. They don't want young international students being in Canada and finding themselves alone and lonely in a homestay while they're quarantining. So a big emphasis was put on how much we monitor the students when they're in Canada in quarantine. And we've set up extra special arrangements. We've got what we now call student care managers who are responsible for students in quarantine. This is a whole new position in our company we had to create. And they're working with the students before they even leave Canada and then checking in with them every single day. But there were lots of other requirements around our signage in the schools, our safety procedures, our communication plans. And now that we've been approved, we are operating according to those plans. And that's adding a lot of extra work for our team, but it's good to have this very strict policy and procedure in place because it really guides how we operate in this current environment.
Yeah. So it's amazing what you're sharing, Tamsin, because it's a brand new reality for all of us. I mean, everything from the moment everything was shut down and all our members began taking care of the students, and providing these online courses or whatever was possible, and now to these guidelines that everybody's following. So I did want to mention that the process for being on that list is dynamic. In other words, Tamwood was first off the blocks for sure. We have 70% of our members now on that list. So a lot have been approved, and we expect that. So a new list was published the 16th, 2 days ago, and on December 2nd, the update will be published. We expect that over 90% of Languages Canada members that are designated will be on that list. I also wanted to point out that, you know, a lot of really good institutions have not gotten on the list through absolutely no fault of their own. What do you think happens when you send a document that's so many pages to one government department, who has to send it to the next one, who has to send it to the next one, who has to send it to the next one, then back all the way around? And then it takes 2 weeks to upload those who are accepted. So we have schools that have been accepted by the province who will be on that next list. They can tell you who they are. Okay. So, and by the way, students can register for and apply for a study permit to those schools that are not yet on the list, but will be on the list if they have provincial assurance. So if you have partners with whom you've worked for many years, and they're not yet on that list, they will be very soon. I want to talk a little bit about what Tamsin said, taking care of students. You know, as she pointed out, quarantine is not an easy thing, and the measures that Tamwood is putting in place are fantastic. We know, and I know from personal experience, going through quarantine for 2 weeks, you need support. It's not just the food delivered to your door, but it's you need contact and so on. So there are many creative forces at work at this point to provide that. All right, I'm going to launch a little poll over here, and you should see it on your browser. If you would take the time to answer it and let me know what you think. So this poll is around study permits. So we thought we'd ask this just for a little bit of fun, and also to have an idea of where people stand. Earlier today when we ran this, there was a big gap between what half of the people understood and what the reality of it. And it's really important because a lot of people are under the fallacy that students have to come for 6 months or more to be under a study permit. And I see from the respondents of the poll right now that things are moving around. This is a little bit like the elections, where we can see the votes trickling in. 60% say no minimum, 40% say 6 months. And I can tell you right now that 6 months is incorrect. Okay, so you need a study permit to come into Canada. You don't have to be here for 6 months to obtain a study permit. But there's a little trick to this. You have to make sure that you apply for a study permit, and initially you have to say over 6 months, and then on the actual application, you state the complete amount of time. IRCC has told us, this is the Immigration Refugee Department of Canada, so the ministry that is responsible for this, the visa officers, that this is the way to go. It's their advice, and we will share with you after the conference verbatim what their advice is. Okay.
And Gonzalo, maybe I'll just contribute to that. I think the reason 40% of the people said 6 months is because you're right in a sense. The rules require you to have a study permit if you're studying 6 months or more. It requires you. You cannot come into Canada for a program that's more than 6 months without a study permit. But it doesn't mean you're not eligible to apply for one if you're studying less than 6 weeks. Sorry, 6 months. So it is mandatory for anyone studying more than 6 months. But if you're coming for less than 6 months, in the past, it was, most people wouldn't bother getting one because you were allowed into Canada to study less than 6 months. But now, with the border being closed to tourists, it's in your students' best interest to apply for a study permit. They will not be allowed into Canada without a study permit. So they are eligible to apply for one, even if the program is less than 6 months, but they should attach to their application for the study permit a letter indicating that they have an intention to extend their studies in Canada. So it's very normal that someone might come to Canada for a 12-week English course, not knowing what they're going to do after that's finished. They want to look around, they want to visit other schools, they want to visit other colleges, and maybe they're going to extend in the school they're in, maybe they're going to switch schools. So they don't initially have a registration for more than a certain number of weeks, maybe 8, maybe 12. But they can say that their intention is to extend once in Canada. And that will make them eligible for a study permit. And I think Gonzalo and I both believe that the immigration officers currently want our industry to survive, and they're looking for ways to give study permits to people, even if the program is less than 6 months, as long as they see evidence, right, Gonzalo?
Absolutely, and we've been assured at both management, public service level, and from inside the Minister of Immigration's office that the applicants for study permits to come to Canada now are being prioritized. So this is good news. As Tamsin said, we want students to come. And I also noticed from the results of the poll that this group is a lot more knowledgeable than the group that we had this morning. So kudos to you. Bravo.
The other thing maybe that ties into this is the willingness to give study permits is probably a little bit informed by the new announcement about new immigration targets. So Canada just released an announcement that they're increasing the number of immigrants they want to allow into Canada over the next several years. And where are they going to find those immigrants from? A very good source is international students, right? The pathway to immigration through education is a very favored pathway. So of course, they're going to be more open to receiving more students because they have to hit this target. They've set a goal for themselves to reach this target of new immigrants.
Yeah, absolutely. And 54,000 of the nearly 300,000 residents, Canadian residents in 2019 came from international education. So you're 100% right, Tamsin. The new goal is to have 400,000 immigrants come in per year. Canada desperately needs immigrants, and language education is a gateway into everything, to education, to immigration, to the workforce, and so on. I wanted to go on to something that has come up. We've had agents and our members ask us around processing times. So I'm going to launch another little poll over here and see what you say on this one. Does the government website provide accurate data in processing times? So the answers are yes, no, or trick question. And of course, if you are familiar with this particular topic, you've seen some of our markets, like in Japan or in Mexico and so on, there's 30 weeks for processing times for study permits. And so, of course, we're all very concerned about this length of time. And now we've got the answers, and it's an even split yes, no, and trick question. So those who put trick question, you're right. Oh, it's changing now. Okay, I gave away the answer. It's evening out again. This is good. This is like watching the election tracking. So what is happening is, yes, the data that is being posted is correct, but it's not correct for what we want and what we interpret. When we go and look at a government website or any website and we see how long will it take to process my visa, my study permit, if I'm in Seoul or if I'm in Beijing or Japan or Mexico, we want the answer of how long will it take. What we're getting instead is the average that it has taken this year. Now, with COVID-19, many offices closed. So some applications have been sitting there since the end of March until now. And they count this as the average processing times. So we wanted to be very, very clear. This is how IRCC is tracking its average for processing times without taking into account the impact of the pandemic. Now that many of these visa offices have reopened, and we'll talk about that in a moment, processing times are not only back to normal, but being prioritized for international students. So hopefully they will be even faster. Tamsin, do you want to add to this? What's your experience around this?
Yeah, I mean, so we have been hearing that some of our students who applied in the last 2 months have received their study permits. And we're seeing a lot of people applying to Tamwood now, especially ever since the announcement was made. I think people were sitting on registrations, waiting to send them to know when the students might be able to arrive. And so we've seen a massive number of registrations over the last month and a half. And students are applying for study permits. So we don't know yet, but we get the sense that, as you said, Gonzalo, the processing time is decreasing every week as they make their way through the backlog, and now they're catching up and moving ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to the good news, I mean, we've all gone through this. So many offices and businesses and organizations have had to close their doors, including VACs. The visa application centers that Canada has used, and those are all starting to reopen. So the figures that we have as of November 12th is that of the 159 VACs outside of Canada and the US, there are now 100 open. 59 are not yet open for biometrics and things, but 15 of those are minimally open. In some cases, if a biometric is not available in your immediate location, it could be available outside, nearby. Like we know, for example, offices in the US are open. If you're in Mexico, you can easily come into the US, you can have that process there. We're providing that as information for an option for some students. But what we're doing, where we're spending our time, is lobbying government to get our VACs open and running as quickly as possible. Okay. All right. Tamsin, let's talk about in-person classes and modalities in Canada, because there's so much.
Yeah. So when COVID hit, all the schools in Canada moved very quickly to having classes offered virtually. And the majority of us closed our schools within a few weeks. We weren't required to initially, but we all felt it was the prudent and safe thing to do for our staff and for our students. And I was super impressed with how our team and the other schools in our sector were able to mobilize and get equipment and into each teacher's home to be able to deliver online classes. And we did a lot of training of our teachers so they could deliver effective live online classes. We reopened our facilities in July for students to come into school, at first Vancouver and then Whistler and then Toronto. And students have been returning and coming to class. But in some cases, because of social distancing, where class sizes used to fit in a room, they no longer do. When we have an average class size of 11 or 12, but now with social distancing, we're not allowed to have more than 7 or 6 in a room, depending on the size of the room. What we've had to do, rather than hire a second teacher, which would double our costs, is we've installed cameras in the rooms. We've gotten all the high-tech equipment we need to do live streaming. So half the students come to school on Monday and the other half are at home joining remotely. And then they alternate in the bigger groups. What's very interesting is that the students we've always assumed they prefer in-school classes, that would be their preference. But a lot of days, the students are letting us know that they want to stay at home and take part in the classes remotely just because they actually enjoy doing it from their computer. And so this is really informing us about how students want to study. It's not because of the pandemic that they're staying home. It's because they actually like staying in class online. They like to take it in their pajamas. They like to take it from the couch. They don't want to have to get up and drive downtown or come downtown to join a class if they can join it from the comfort of their home. And we did a survey of our students last week, and we hit every student in every class with the same survey, and they all responded. And we asked questions about how do you want to study now, and how do you want to study when the pandemic is over? And we gave them different options. And the overall response by a large majority was students want a blended delivery model. They want some classes live in class, some classes live online, and they want a certain number of classes in a format called asynchronous, which means it's recorded. They can see a lecture, like they can watch a video like this with a professor talking, and they can go into the platform and answer questions live with other students. But the teacher doesn't teach live. So if they want to, they can rewatch the video, slow the video down, and they can do it whenever it suits them. So if they have a job in Canada, they can work those classes around their job. So that's been very interesting to see how that's happening. Now, I think a number of schools are going to go back to virtual over the next couple of weeks while we wait to see what happens with the current level of cases. They've spiked up a little bit. Businesses are still open. Nobody's requiring schools to close, but I think a lot of schools just feel that given the students are quite comfortable being online, we might just go back to online for a couple of weeks until the numbers come back down again.
Yeah. So a lot of innovation. We are realizing as a sector that things will change forever from now on, and every member, every institution is going about it a little bit differently, and that's to be celebrated. I did want to point out that please don't make any assumptions. There are people who have told me, why are all Canadian universities closed or colleges closed? This is not true. Some have their campuses closed, some have their campuses open, some are in between. Many institutions are also using some type of blended approach. And one of the things that we have discovered as a result of the pandemic is that the students are not looking for just English or French, bien sûr, ici au Canada, but they're looking for the Canadian experience. And this is what can be offered still very powerfully through our member institutions. It's 6:22. At what time are we supposed to end?
In 3 minutes.
Minutes. All right. I want to wrap it up and invite people to send questions in. Please just send questions in if you have them. But I did want to say that from the Languages Canada perspective, here are the things that we're working on. Number one, how do we make entry into Canada easier for students? And how can we support students and support our members support students more comprehensively and fully as the pandemic goes on and as we tackle recovery as well? So we're dealing with government at all levels. We are lobbying for students not under study permits to come in, for example. We are providing the Study Safe Corridor, which is a very comprehensive package. And your students can actually purchase it and use it to come in through the quarantine process, or you can go directly through our members through their quarantine process. But whatever we can do to help to bring students in, that's what we're there for. Okay, Tamsin.
Yeah, so I put my email address in the chat. If anybody has any more questions about any of this, feel free to message me. I'm happy to share the message that Gonzalo shared with me, which is the email he got from IRCC, which explains the visa and how to apply for a study permit, even if you're not coming for a program over 6 months. And I see Gonzalo's just put his email address in the chat as well. So take a minute here, and if you want to copy those and place them somewhere in your files, we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And I think it's morning in Asia, and I can see there's 8 participants here and that are not schools. And at least I counted 8 that I don't think are schools. And I just want to say good morning. And I hope you have a good rest of the day, and I hope your meetings go well. We're finishing for the day, but the team from Asia is taking over at this point.
Great. Well, yes, thank you everybody for coming, for showing up. any questions that you have. We will be sending a lot of this information out in writing, sharing it with you.
There is a question in the Q&A. Do you
Okay.
know what will happen with students who are planning to apply for a study permit for a program of less than 6 months offered by schools located in the province of Quebec who don't have their own DLI number?
So we're working with the government of Quebec and with the federal government to find a DLI number especially for these schools. And if not, they work through a system of affiliation to a school recognized by the government of Quebec. I don't know if people are aware, but our private sector members in Quebec, through no fault of their own, they follow the same accreditation, everything, for internal governmental structural reasons, have not been able to obtain DLIs. So this has been going on for years. We found ways around it. So 2 methods: their affiliation with a recognized institution, and all our private sector members have that. So just ask them for it. And number 2, we're lobbying for their own private DLI during the pandemic to deal with this specific issue. And, you know, Canada is a land of many different regions. And there's a specialist in the Prime Minister's office on Quebec. So we're working with the Prime Minister's office on that.
Thank you. Great. Okay, thank you. So again, if you have any other questions, feel free to connect with us, and have a good day or evening wherever you are.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Merci beaucoup.